Right, to explore whether Trump's sudden rhetorical pivot marks a new American strategy or simply a recalibration for political gains, we're now joined by Mr. Peter Roff, contributing editor at Newsweek from Washington. So good evening to you, sir, and welcome to Think Tank. Let me start here by asking you, how dramatic is this shift in Trump's Ukraine policy compared to his earlier positions?
It's good to be with you. It's certainly a dramatic shift, but it's not one, surprisingly, that's moved the conversation a lot here in the United States. It was pretty clear up to now that the Trump position was, we're not going to stake the U.S. support for Ukraine on rollback to the pre-Crimea invasion borders. And that whatever the solution was, it was going to involve some acceptance and some swap of land. I think the president and his advisors even had said that at some point. This is a huge shift, but Trump is known for huge shifts, wild shifts, dramatic shifts. He has a much higher tolerance for political risk than most politicians. And he is a skilled negotiator. And so the idea that we've moved on to Plan B or Plan C is not at all, in some sense, a surprise, since the promise of what followed the August Putin-Trump summit in Alaska seems to have dissipated.
Right, I guess we're now joined by Professor Kamran Gassanov, a political scientist at Salzburg University from Moscow. And let me here ask you, from Moscow's perspective, does the Kremlin view this as a rhetoric or as the beginning of a strategic break?
Yes, I think that Moscow sees it rather than a rhetoric. And recently we saw the comment made by the press secretary of the Russian president, Dmitry Peskov, who said that for Russia it's clear that Trump is still committed to the peace resolution, to peace deal. And Russia doesn't doubt that Trump is still committed and will take steps in this direction. But at the same time, I think that Moscow understands that it's obvious that the rhetoric of Donald Trump is toughened, and it has the reason Russia takes it seriously in consideration. But in order not to break the diplomatic route, I think that Kremlin is trying not to concentrate on the negative parts of Trump's statement. But at the same time, I see that there is also some really untypical statement made by Donald Trump. So he said that Ukraine is able to gain all territories and even more. So it's unreal, remembering that during the scandal in White House with the participation of Vladimir Zelensky, Trump said that you have no cards. Ukraine should accept the current situation and status quo and the loss of its territories. And we heard many times by the advisory of Donald Trump, by his state secretary, that Ukraine should be ready to cede some territories. I think that the main reason why Trump, let's say, is so angry is that the time is running out and his patience is running out. And there is 2 months after the last negotiations in Istanbul and 1 month, more than 1 month after the meeting in Anchorage. And nothing happens. No peace agreement, no advance in this direction. And that's why Trump is so angry. But at the same time, he said that I gave me about 30 days in order to say that if I trust Vladimir Putin or not. So he's still delaying his deadlines and he's believing. I think he's really believing that the peace agreement is still possible.
But this is why we are here to analyze the shift in rhetoric or the statements, the shift in statements of Trump. Let me go here to Mr. Roff. And Mr. Roff, many remember Trump urging Ukraine to concede territory. Why do you think he has reversed himself so abruptly?
I think he's embarking on a new negotiating strategy. Putin has, this is Putin's war. It's phase two of Putin's war to take by force Ukraine back into Greater Russia. Remember, of course, we've discussed this many times, that Putin was a signatory, Russia was a signatory to the Budapest Agreement that guaranteed Ukraine's territorial integrity.
But that was
Russia
also, that was also termed by some of the conditions that were put also in the agreement, which said that Ukraine should not join the NATO, and that would be a safe territory for both sides. Ukraine should be a neutral side. That was also termed in the conditions of this agreement.
That was also in the agreement, but Ukraine didn't actually join NATO. The NATO nations did not extend an offer to Ukraine to join NATO. They were having a conversation, and they were having a conversation back before Obama was president. They were having a long conversation. It was not a consummated agreement. And when Russia invaded under Putin, when they took Crimea, the Obama administration's weak response essentially served Ukraine up on a platter. And Putin has been taking bites over decades. NATO membership is off the table now. President Trump has made that clear. I think that, while it hasn't been said directly, I think the United States would block NATO membership for Ukraine if it were to be proposed. And so if Putin started this war to keep Ukraine neutral, to keep Ukraine out of NATO, he's achieved his objective. He can bring his troops back across the sea and restore the Donbass region and Crimea to the control of the Ukrainian civil government.
Professor Gassanov, what do you have first to what Mr. Roff said? And second, could Trump's new position signal increased U.S. military aid to Ukraine? And what are the political implications of this? What could it be?
So, as for weapons, which will be and are delivered, already delivering to the Ukraine, for Trump there is more not a political, I think, implication, but more business implication. So he sells the weapon, earns money for the U.S. military industry, and he's happy. So continuing the war, if the war continues, Trump wants to earn something from this war. But at the same time, it's also obvious that sending weapons, it also may, to some extent, help Ukrainian army to resist and to make the life of the Russian army worse. So the advance of Russian army would be worse, but it's still inevitable. So the Russian president tries to explain that continuing the war is not in the interest of Ukraine, because Russia, yes, it may advance slowly or fast, but it's advancing. It's clear. As for the point what you already mentioned of NATO, yes, this is one of the root causes of this conflict. On the one hand, we see that Trump doesn't want to allow Ukraine to enter the NATO, but at the same time, we also observe that some European states, the coalition of willing, they try to find some substitute of NATO membership with the Article 5 or the sending the peacekeepers. So, and this makes also Russia unhappy because Russia.
Right, Mr. Gassanov, but Mr. Roff here said that President Trump put off the whole issue of joining the NATO. So, what do you have on that?
Yes, this is true, and I think that Russia appreciates the position of Trump in terms of NATO. But as I mentioned, that some European states, they try to give some substitution instead of joining NATO, like some security guarantees, sending forces there in form of peacekeepers. And Russia is unhappy. Russia doesn't want that instead of NATO, the European countries, the other member states will enter the Ukrainian territory. And this so-called security guarantees is also one of the problems why we still continue to discuss this agreement, because European Union promised that they will declare, they will show the security guarantees, but until now we don't see it. There is more than about a month after the last meeting in White House with the European leaders, but there is no clear draft of the security guarantees. And I think that the next step should be to discuss the security guarantees, and also we shouldn't also forget that Russian president invited Vladimir Zelensky to Moscow to meet, because Zelensky insisted that we should meet, and Russian president said, if you would like to meet, you are welcome. If you don't come to Russia, then your question about that Vladimir Putin doesn't want to meet with me, it's not serious.
Mm-hmm. Let me get back to you, Mr. Roff, and you said that Trump's shift was a kind of new strategy. Now, could this, by any means, this shift, be linked to Trump's domestic political calculations as the election season intensifies?
No, I don't think it is, because the war is unpopular among Trump's base. They do not see any U.S. economic or national security interest in the defense of Ukraine. They are suspicious. They view the Ukraine as a kleptocracy, as a corrupt state run by oligarchs, and the only real question is, does it lean towards Europe or does it lean towards Moscow? And the argument that you will hear among the Trump base is that, well, you know, the Biden people, when he was vice president, intervened in Ukraine to oust a pro-Moscow leader in favor of a pro-Europe leader, so that they could all the politicians could all get fat off the hog, so they could share in the graft. And they point to the former vice president's son's membership on the board of directors of the energy company and other incidents as, if not proof, as a strong suggestion that that strategy is correct. And so the pro-Ukraine move, rather than a pro-settlement move, would not be seen as something that the Trump voters would embrace. It might have appealed to Democrats, but it is not something that the traditionally the Republican.
Do I understand from what you're saying here that Trump's shifted his policy or strategy or even vision towards the whole aspect, and he returned to the previous administration ways or means or strategy?
I'm not saying that at all, that he's adopting the Biden policy, not at all. I mean, the Biden policy towards Ukraine, frankly, during the Biden administration was a giant question mark. But during the Obama administration, in which Mr. Biden served as vice president, there are people in the Trump political orbit, commentators and others, who believe that Mr. Biden leveraged his position as the vice president of the United States for ill-gotten to earn ill-gotten gains for himself and his political cronies here, and for cronyism, political cronies in Europe. That is not the president's view. That is the view of people who are in his political orbit outside of government, who nonetheless communicate with voters and have influence. And so they will not embrace a Russia out of Ukraine position. They believe, as I said, that Ukraine is hopelessly corrupt, no matter who's in charge, and that the only difference is Kiev oriented towards Moscow, or is it oriented towards the West? Hmm. I think that a Trump offer that says no NATO membership for Ukraine, period, ever, blocked and vetoed by the United States, in exchange for Russia pulling back all the way to Russia, okay, allows Putin to claim victory in a defensive war rather than proclaiming this a Russian imperial war to reassemble the greater Russia that was once the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. It ends the war to the benefit of everyone, particularly the people of Ukraine. And in fact, the Ukrainian army deserves considerable credit for punching above their weight. They're not losing. And that's really the important point here. If you are a student of history, you will know that there have been a number of armed conflicts over the centuries. And I'm thinking of the war in Vietnam, and of also the American Revolution against the British, mm-hmm, where the ultimate winner was not winning, did not appear to be winning the war as it was being conducted. But what was more important is that they remained in the field and weren't losing. And I think you can make the same argument for what the Ukrainian military is doing. They may not be winning, but they're not losing.
So,
they're still in the
clear. So we're speaking here about the vision of Mr. Trump towards this strategy is a win-win situation for all, but with no winner on the ground. Let me here go to Mr. Gassanov, and Putin has been described by Trump now as a paper tiger. How has this characterization been received in Russia's political circles?
So the Russian, the press secretary of Vladimir Putin already answered this question, and he said that Russia is not a paper tiger. So it was, I understand that Russia doesn't take it seriously. This is like a joke, I would say. And the main issues which were mentioned by Trump, this refers to the strengthening the pressure of the United States, and this is just rhetoric, comparing with tiger or with elephant, so it doesn't matter. So generally, I think that Trump, what he's trying now to do, at first when he came to the office, he started to pressure Zelensky. So he pressured Zelensky. Zelensky opposed, then he apologized. The United States, they stopped the financial military assistance and surveillance support. And then Zelensky understood that and said that we should hear Mr. Trump, Trump knowing better what to do. And that's why in the White House last time he was very silent, very calm. And now Trump wants to trigger this process by pressuring Russia. But the difference is that if in case of the Ukraine, Trump has instruments to pressure the Ukraine, because Ukraine is dependent on U.S. assistance, even if we speak about European support, it also relies on Russia, on the U.S. support, because without American weapons, European Union would be unable to help Ukraine. But in case of Russia, it will not work. I don't know if he is understanding this or not. He at least trying to pressure Russia. But it will not work because in order to pressure Russia, you should force the European Union to stop all LNG supplements from Russia. The second, you should force the partners of Russia to refuse gas deals with gas, oil, which will be conducted by Turkey, by China, and India. China said we disagree with this step. We will not accept. We will not impose some embargo. India, the same story. And Turkey is not still under the pressure. And that's why Trump is without any weapon. The single option would be if the United States will unilaterally increase the sending of their weapons to Ukraine, but Trump doesn't want to sponsor useless Ukraine because it's just devastating the U.S. budget, and that's why he criticized the Biden administration. So this is the reality. I see that there is no way to somehow advance the peace deal. I think this will only alienate Russia, though Russia is still trying to keep the connection, the diplomatic contact with the United States. But if Trump is serious, really, he will continue with this pressure. It will break. It will break the peace attempt.
Mr. Roff, you illustrated on Trump's vision towards a win-win situation here. From your point of view, in Washington policy circles, is there a belief or a true belief that Ukraine truly can reclaim all its territory militarily?
There is doubt. Let's put it that way, because it would require one of two things: that the Russians are expelled by force, which seems unlikely, or they choose to withdraw, which could be achievable if Trump can, or someone can propose a win-win kind of scenario.
Do you really,
Putin,
do you really think, or do the political circles think that Putin would really retreat?
I think they're highly doubtful, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. This is an interesting wrinkle. Putin is a pariah right now. Remember
that's a harsh description, Mr. Roff. That's a very harsh description, right?
Mr. Gassanov might not agree with me, but no, I think he's a pariah. He's made war on a neighboring state without provocation. Russia is not producing anything the world wants except rare earth metals, oil, and natural gas. And they're selling it cheaply to fund their war in Ukraine. If the United States can find a way, and I think under President Trump, they can find a way to help ease the energy crunch that would occur were the Western Europeans to stop buying energy from the Russians and instead buy it from the United States, buy it from Mexico, buy it from Canada. I think that puts Putin in a real block. You don't see a lot of people, again, rushing to Putin's side in this thing. Who's on his side except the Chinese and the North Koreans?
Right, clear, Mr. Roff. I have to end it here because my time is out. Mr. Gassanov, I wish if I have been able to give you just half a minute to reply, but my time is off. Thank you so much, Mr. Peter Roff and Mr. Kamran Gassanov, for sharing your expertise and perspectives on this important and rapidly evolving issue.